Welcome back to It's Technically Romance, where we take a look at Hallmark films from our two different points of view. Mine being the somewhat cynical cinephile.
And mine being the hopeless romantic.
My name is Hamilton.
And I'm Stephanie.
And today we have a very, very special episode for y'all.
Yes, we have the one and only national treasure, Kimberley Sustad.
We had an excellent conversation with her. I don't even want to say anything else about it. I just want to jump into the episode.
She really is as fun and cool and authentic as Brad Baxter calls her in Lights, Camera, Christmas. She really is that person.
Wholeheartedly agree to that. So thank you guys so much for listening. We're going to jump right into the interview, and we really appreciate you all.
And we hope you enjoy it as much as we did.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
I think I got it. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear us okay?
I can.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it. I'm sure you're swamped this week.
I'm happy to be here.
We're honored to have you. But we always like to sort of start off and ask how you got involved with Hallmark and sort of what your journey has been like working with them and like what keeps you coming back to make movies with them.
I feel like I got involved in Hallmark back when like it wasn't necessarily cool to be doing them. I always thought they were cool. And then they've kind of hit that, I don't know, maybe the hipsters did it. You know how they always take something that like never necessarily was cool before, and then they all get into it, and then it's like mainstream cool. So I was an early adopter of Hallmark. So I think 9 Kittens was one of my first, or somewhere in there. And I love making rom-coms. It's my favorite thing. I'm not one of those, like tell us like your 10 greatest films. And I say like the smartest things out there. I'll be like, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, Pretty Woman, #1, and I'll like list the 90s, all of the greatest 90s rom-coms, because I love that. I've always loved them since I was little. I've watched them 10 times each, and I'm a total nerd for that. So that's, and I get to do that with Hallmark, which is nice.
Same. Yeah, those are all my favorite movies too.
Yeah, we could definitely hang out and just do a marathon of like,
oh my gosh. And it's been so fun getting him to them, like the ones he's like never seen, like all the classics. So I've gotten to get him to watch them.
Yeah. Bridget Jones, like so many of all of these, all the Sandy movies.
We just watched While You Were Sleeping. He had never seen it.
It was great. I was like, how have I not seen this? And Notting Hill blew me away. I couldn't.
Notting Hill. I rewatched that too recently because the movie that I just did, Lights, Camera, Christmas, reminded me a little bit about that movie, except the roles were reversed. Like he was Julia Roberts and I was the bookstore owner, but this time I own like a retrofit thrift store / put some of my own designs in it.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah.
But great segue into Lights, Camera, Christmas. It's one of our favorites this year so far. So do you want to talk about what drew you to the script? Maybe it was the Notting Hill nod, but what made you interested in doing this film and how was that experience?
Well, when I was talking to Hallmark about what this year Christmas was going to be, we initially were maybe thinking I would do more of, go back to like a Godwink Christmas, do more of the kind of dramatic sort of slow romance sort of thing, where we're like contemplating we're all having existential crises or something. And then one of the heads of Hallmark was like, what about this? Just, I thought of you as soon as I read this, and then I read it and I went, that. So that's how that happened. Yeah.
You were like,
I
yeah,
was
that sounds
thinking
fun.
about a totally different one. She was like a single mom. Oh, maybe I shouldn't say it because somebody's definitely done it, and I don't know, but it was like a really heartstring, kind of pull at the heartstrings movie. And then I read this when I went, oh, let's just laugh and have fun and just, like, let's do that this year. And maybe I'll do sort of a different one next. Wow. I'm such a good podcaster. This is why I don't do that.
You're
like,
great. What are you
hey,
talking about?
Kimberly, why don't you trail on forever?
We love the trails. We love the rabbit trails, the tangents. We want it all.
Well, is that, I mean, speaking of that, is that sort of this, I like that this sort of slow burn Christmas romance. Are those ones that you prefer to do, or do you like the ones that are more laid back, like lights, camera, a lot more
I like
fun?
them both. I really do. I like the Sleepless in Seattle, and I like 2 weeks notice. I can do both, and they both, or I do like North to Home or something that's not even Christmas at all. It's like this drama between three sisters. I like to exercise it all, really. Yeah, that's the I don't stick to one necessarily, like exercise one muscle in the wow.
She's amazing.
I need some Baileys in my coffee.
She's like, I can do it all. And you can.
No, well, I'm like, yeah, immediately in my brain, I was like, don't say that, but I can do both. So I love to do both. And well, maybe I can't do both. I guess that would be for you to decide.
You can do both.
Telling you,
you can do both.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And this, now I'm prepping for a Valentine's Day, which I don't think I have ever done. I know my movies so well, as you can tell. And it's a bit of both. It's like, it's like Lights, Camera, Christmas smashed into Godwink. Like if there was ever, so it'll be interesting. I'm trying to figure that out.
Oh, that sounds fun.
About how to balance that and everything. And
yeah, you kind of go, you got to earn the slow beats, right? You got to earn that time where you come down. But then when you really have to let that be, because if you work too hard, then that moment just, I don't know, the music doesn't sing. It's like playing in a band. You kind of go like, someone's totally smashing the drums and I'm trying to do something else. But
I love that. I love that you said you got to earn those slow beats. I absolutely love that. I think you're absolutely right on that.
Yeah.
Because you have to have that audience invested with you.
Yeah. You got to go, oh, let us take a breath. Sit down and tell us all about that for a second. And then when you're there, you got to be there. You got to hear what people are saying, and you got to hear, and you got to, experience, use that time, because then the rest you're off, being impacted by things, or responding to things, or reacting to things. And then you kind of come back down again. And it's every script that I do, I really try to, I'll build that. Like, if you ever, I wish I had one of mine there over, that's just like drawn out, and it's beats. That's how I work. I take like a section and I go, here's where this starts, here's where this ends. So what is this about? What is this story? It's all mini stories within a massive story. And then you kind of work that out, and you hear and feel how it goes. And then by the end, it should do a number of rise and falls. And then you kind of get to the end, right? And by the end, you're either invested or shattered, or, who knows?
Well, I love it, because one of the questions I was going to ask you is about craft, and I can't believe, so you actually go through the script and you block out those sort of beats and those moments, and that's awesome.
Yeah, a lot of people will do this, they work, I'll read the script, at least 5 times. So the story, I know the story very well, because I look at, for sports fans, it's really like the director, and then I feel like the quarterback. We both know the game very well, but we have very different jobs. Mine is to march the ball down the field, and his is to call the plays, right? So I need to know and have that team, whoever's in that scene with me, we're doing this play, and we got to, it looks like this, and to sort of lead that as best as you can, so that we all know what we're doing within those beats. I'll always sit down with everybody who I'm going, okay, so what's this about? What do we accomplish? Because in every little scene, we should try to accomplish something, right?
I love that. I think that explains why you're so good at what you do, is because you take the time, you put the effort, you put the energy into every scene. And so each scene that you're in just really shines through.
Oh,
that's wonderful.
Well, I don't know if every scene does, but I try.
So, well, talking about how you take the time to dive into your scripts, I've said it before and I will keep saying it. You are the best crier in these movies. So how do you attack that? Where do you find that emotion in that moment? You do the voice crack and everything. It gets me. I'm sobbing with you. You're so good.
I have a lot of deep pain in my life. So, you just let that in and you go, I have a lot of empathy, and when I feel when I'm deeply invested, and I've you put the work in to whatever script you're doing, but when you get there, you experience those moments. Hit me when I read the script. I go, and when I think about what this is about, so often that certain moments will be you're saying these words and you're trying to explain something to somebody, but they're about something else. They're about this fear or this insecurity, or just feeling dumb, or you don't add up, or alone, or these very human things that connect us all. And that's honestly how I attack that. I see it, and then I feel it for her, and then it lives in the scene or in that moment. And sometimes those moments, if you're really I'm trying to be present, it surprises me. I go, ow. And then they're like, well, I didn't see that. Some of those scenes, before we even shot them, sometimes the director will come to me and be like, we're running out of time. This is probably going to end up on the cutting room floor. So do you want to just move on? Right? We haven't even done it yet. We haven't even sat down. And I say, you got to put yourself out there, because I go, no, there's something to be said here. Are you serious? Yes. And then you feel like you got to show them, right? You got to show them that. And then they'll do it. And Lights, Camera, Christmas was one of them, actually, because I think there's a scene in the kitchen where I just feel taken, you know, by the whole situation. And I thought about that so often because of course we fall in love with a movie star, right? You can believe that, but then you realize that that's what you've done and he's still a movie star and he's moving on and you're just, and he's going to leave town. Like you're not actually part of his world. And for a minute you believed that maybe you were, and then it's about something even bigger. Like for a minute you believed in yourself. And then that big fear that has been holding you back your whole life says, nah, you're just an ordinary girl from an ordinary town. Go back to being ordinary. You'll never be anything that, you know, go back to what you were. Your dream is stupid, you know, and for a second you're just like, maybe that's true, right? So
I see it. I'm like ready.
Yeah, I'm like ready to cry too.
Now.
Like hearing you go through this, I'm like, oh man, I'm feeling it right now. Like,
well,
geez.
because we all go through that.
Wow.
We have a moment of belief in ourselves. And then the greatest thing, as soon as that light comes in, is darkness wants to tell us, before you let it shine, you're not good enough. You're not meant for that. You can't do that. Yeah. And then you either crumble under that and you go, yeah, what was I thinking? Or you try and you fail or you succeed. But the beauty in at least trying is that human experience of maybe you fail. Like one of my favorite movies, Silver Linings Playbook, is the fact that they pour their hearts and soul into something and the journey there is a total failure. Like they go to that dance contest and they're way too they're way above their heads, right? And these like professionals are like, you know, and these two get up and you're like, oh my gosh, right? Like you do not belong there. And this whole movie we're like, well, maybe they can do it, you know, but they absolutely can't. But the beauty of that moment is how proud they are that they tried. And so they win. And of course, there's the parlay and there's like that whole other thing that's going on the sidelines. But you go, I love that. I love the trying. And we either cry along because we too know it's a risk. And risk is so beautiful, whether you succeed or fail. And sometimes it's more beautiful when you fail because we just always do.
Yeah.
And nobody's perfect. And it never looks like you think it was going to, but just the conquering of that fear is what's extraordinary in all of us. So, wow, that was
That was amazing.
I love it because so many times on the podcast, we talk about this, you know, these characters following their dreams and succeeding. And I'll bring up that, you know, just one time I want them to get to that dream and realize it wasn't for them. Either it didn't work out or it wasn't what they wanted. And then they have to back away from that and pivot. Because to me, that makes the character so much more realistic, so much more believable. And we still have that wonderful
I try to find that in every script I do.
I love it.
And so that's where that scene will come. And it's not always necessarily on the page, right? But we're not on the page anymore. We're in the character. So a lot of the times the scenes will shift. And I'm not saying like a writer's script is a blueprint for me by any means. You know, I try to follow that, but sometimes something happens and you go, oh, we didn't know, we had never interpreted it that way. So yes, that stays and something else will go, right? You know, everyone came out from that and they were like, well, that seems like we're not cutting that. So we'll figure out how to save the day somewhere else. I was like, okay, great. You know, because I think it's important, you know, that piece in every story. And sometimes these Hallmark movies don't always have that right in front of your face, but if I can, or as actors find it, it's there because we're people, right? It's there. And what is this story about? It's always a journey towards something. So where are we going and how do we feel when we get there or don't? And I love the ones that fail. Because I don't know, I often feel, I don't know about you, but like the underdog, like in school, I was never the popular kid. I was never, I played basketball. I was a bit of a tomboy, I don't know. I was like sort of into the arts, and it was all over the place. And, I never had boyfriends. I was a Hallmark movie, or I was Merrily. So I didn't do any of the cool things. And I love, rooting for people that are not necessarily on the front lines or in the front all the time, and go, what's that person's story behind there?
Yeah, I love that. Well, we do know what you are, and that is talented. You have ventured into writing for these movies now, which is very exciting for us. How did that happen? Have you always written? Did you know that this is something you wanted to eventually do?
Yeah. So I did God Went Christmas with Paul Campbell, and he's an extraordinary actor as well. And like, not just funny, like, oftentimes you find really funny people have this really sincere, dramatic side. You'll see it everywhere, I think, because their humor comes from deep pain. I don't know. Paul's going to be like, yeah, thanks.
No, we actually spoke to him. He's been on the podcast and he did speak to that. So yes.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
I see right through you, Paul. You're actually just really full of deep pain like me, daddy issues. So we were doing this film, and it was really, like I said, it was more of a romance, but we're dealing with these spiritual elements, and it was more of a dramatic. I think it was an HMM.
Mm-hmm.
And we laughed so much, even like off screen. He is so funny. It was the first time I ever met him, and our humor was very similar in so many ways. Like, we just got the jokes all the time. And we were chatting, and I was like, we should do something. We should do a funny one, or like, we should do a rom-com one, that really shows off what we can do together. Like, put both of those skill sets in one film. I bet you it could be good. And he was like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, oh, we could just chat with Hallmark. He's like, well, let's write one. And I was like, well, I do have this idea. And then I pitched him Starlight Christmas.
Yes.
And then he said, okay, well, let's write that. And I was like, okay. And I thought after the movie, I'd probably never speak to him again. Or sometimes, it's so funny because like actors go on to the next things, and you lose touch with some. And I think it was like 5 months later, I got a text from him, and he's like, all right, so I'm coming over with cue cards, and I got this thing, and like, we're going to sit down, we're going to draw this out. And that was how it started. And now we have a system of writing on cue cards. It's really funny because of the way we first started. we put acts 1 through 9 on a wall, and then it's just like every single thing that happens. And then we like go through the story. We go, what is happening? And that's how we wrote 3 Men and a Baby, and many other ones. So,
many other ones.
We're currently working through another one. We're a little stuck, but we'll get there. Sometimes you hit this thing, I'm like, I don't know what her problem is. I don't know.
Well, had you not written before Christmas by Starlight? Because we know Paul had said he had written like before. So this was like the first thing you ever did.
No. And then,
remarkable.
I pitch it, and he's like, you can do this. And I was like, no, I can't. And it's stories always lived within me. I've got so many going, all the time. And he just encouraged that and brought that out. So I really do owe Paul everything to that, because he saw it, and then I just started, and of course lots of failure, lots. But I try again, and here we are. We have 3 Men and a Baby premiering on Saturday, which we wrote together. And that
We can't wait. We cannot wait. I think everyone's just thrilled to death about this.
I mean, honestly, I feel like it's the most anticipated Hallmark movie this year, like
Ever.
ever.
Yeah, I
know.
can't think of
It's
one
crazy.
It's just been going,
yeah,
chomping
it
at
was a
for it.
dream. It was a dream. And it was so fun writing specifically for people. That is fun. Because they're archetypes, and we really were like, I hope none of you are offended by like how the jokes that we're making, like, Andrew is this like, a bit of like a perfectionist who drinks, matcha tea and,
Sounds like
smoothies all the time. And I'm like, that's so him. He's like,
I was gonna say, sounds like Andrew.
Yeah, it definitely
yeah,
does.
but he's really sincerely that way. And the movie has a lot of fun in it and an extraordinary amount of heart. So I think it stretched all 3 of them to, there's many things going on for each of them, and they all have a really significant journey. And I think not only is it super funny, it really, you should cry at some point. If I did my job.
Who was the most fun to write for? You say the characters. Which one did you have the most enjoyable time writing for?
Well, Tyler, he's got this, we always poke fun at him a little bit because he's like such a cool cat, and I loved having that, unfolding that and peeling back that onion and making it his greatest obstacle.
Huh.
So
That's really cool. Okay.
He's kind of, he was a lot of fun, and to put into circumstances where he was a little too cool for school, but now he's alone and desperate with a baby. Like, you just kind of picture that, and you're like, he's like, what that, it's just like, you don't even know my day, right? And
oh my gosh.
so that was a lot of fun. And then Paul's character, of course, is a lot of fun because like, not to give too, should I even be saying any of this, but he's got a little bit of social anxiety, as does Paul in real life. So, putting him in a lot of extraordinary circumstances where, he's got to like deal with that.
Yeah.
Like, all 3 of them are, their life or death circumstances with this baby. So we just wrote a lot of those true qualities. Andrew's was the hardest to crack.
Huh.
And we should have a follow-up conversation after you read that. But suddenly he really did become a bit of our hero toward the end. And when somebody forever, for like months, I was like, what is the thing he's covering, right? Like, what's the thing that needs to come out? And sometimes when people are, perfectionists or people pleasers, or, it's for something. And then I was like, I got it, but I don't want to say it because it'll like,
yeah.
And then it just brought this massive heart for all of them. And then you went, oh, I get it. I get it now.
The way you're describing this, like, has us even more hype for this movie. Like, it's unbelievable. Like,
It's
that's
really
how I wanna-
great. I haven't seen it actually, so I'm going to watch it along with Andrew and Paul, and I think Nikki will be here, Deloche, and we'll watch it together all for the first time. None of us have seen it.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
So you talk a lot, the stories live within you. How did this story come about? Was this something you had already been thinking about with Paul, or how did this script come
This one
about?
has a funny beginnings. I wasn't privy to it, but I guess someone on social media was like, you know what would be funny is like a 3 Men and a Baby remake or something like that. But at the same time, Paul, Andrew, and Tyler were trying to think of something like to do together.
Yeah.
And at the other same time, Hallmark was calling Paul and I, and we're like, okay, what's the Zoom? Like, fine, we'll get on. And they're like, hey, we have this idea. And then Paul's like, oh, we have this idea. And both of them were a little bit different. And then we smashed them together and it became what it was. So we developed it with Hallmark, and Paul and I were tasked with writing it. So
That's so cool.
And it's just like everything just came together at once, just perfect.
yeah, it did. And it wrote itself. It was
Mhm.
so fun to write, because they really, Jen Kramer was one of our executives, and Samantha DeBeppo, who sort of oversees all Christmas at Hallmark. They really gave us free reign to, of course, like we submitted the first draft, and I was like, let's push it as like, let's write a Netflix film or, something, and go, all right. And they went, cool. Just take out these certain jokes, and like, we're there. And we're like, what?
Wow.
I was like, really?
That's awesome. Like,
They're
go
like,
as far as you can, and
And then bring it
yeah.
back.
Yeah, and they really didn't bring us back that much, and we were, Paul and I were good Hallmarkies, we wrote, we know our audience,
Right.
Yeah.
but at the same time, we know how smart they are,
Mhm.
and we know how, and we know our budget and how many days we have to make that, which is sometimes the limitations
Yeah.
of these movies.
Yeah.
They really could be expanded into a different, land if they wanted to. And I think sometimes they get criticized because they're not that thing, but they're not that thing. That's just not what this channel does, right? They make them this way, and there's a way, this is how we get this accomplished.
Yeah.
Practically. So we worked within those parameters. And of course, every day, the director was like, really, Terry was tasked with a feature film, and he had to accomplish it within the restrictions that he had. He did an amazing job doing that. And he made pretty much, of course we ran a little bit over and some things didn't make it. But it was a feat, and I think it's going to be really great. I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts, honestly.
Oh, we'll have thoughts.
I have many thoughts.
But it does already look, just from the little bit of previews we've seen, like nothing we've seen on Hallmark before. And we love the direction that these new Hallmark movies are going, like more big comedy and smarter jokes. And like you said, like, we're a smart audience, and it's been really fun to watch the growth.
Yeah. And, we've known that all along, but under different direction and under different, CEOs and, different, they're just changing a little bit with the times and taking more risks, because there is an ingrained audience base that, you know, needs, or yeah, it takes time to just kind of go, we're gonna be all right, we're gonna be all right. But this one, and I mean, Lights, Camera, Christmas too, I was a little terrified, because I was like, well, they're either gonna love what we're doing or be terrified of sort of making fun of making Christmas movies. You know, I was like, I don't want to make it feel like I'm making fun of Christmas movies, but we've never had somebody kind of just come in and like not like them, you know, like a character. It's like, okay. And then like, you know, my mother who just loves them. And then, you know, we were like a podcast, you know, and then the person who does them. So all of those perspectives were just, you know, to the extent that you could really push that. And they were like, great, love it. Yeah. I was like, wow. I'm like, are they mad? Are they mad? Does Hallmark still like, am I fired?
After this movie? No, no more.
Never.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things that I think we loved about Lights, Camera so much, was that there was like this meta-ness to it, you know, the film within the film. And you guys, I think you walked that fine line of not necessarily making fun of it, but just celebrating the absurdity of it.
Yeah.
And so was all that in the script? Was there any ad libs you did, like that wink at the end?
Oh yeah.
You know,
that was, I have to give credit where credit is due, because Jonathan was supposed to wink in the end.
Okay.
Or John was supposed to wink in the end, and he was like, what if you did?
Yes. Thank
Genius.
you. Thank you for that.
And then, and then David, our director, was like, yeah, what if you did? And I was like, all right, you know, we had like filmed it so many times. I was like, all right. I was like, you just want to keep filming the scene. Okay, let's try that. And then I just like, you know, I like did it once, and they were like, that stays.
It was just a one and done? It was a one and done?
Yeah, I was like one and done. We were already set up for it. I think maybe once or twice, but yeah, we were just finishing that scene, and they were like, he was like, wait, what if? So it was a really good idea. A lot of stuff was ad-libbed. A lot of stuff was, there was a lot of improvisation that was happening, because there was so much fun that we were having.
Yeah.
So that began to lift it. Yeah. And then, yeah, like trying to put the Santa suit on him. There was so many outtakes of that never made the movie, because we only have so much time, but I wish they had stayed, because it was really good. He was like practicing in the mirror, doing Shakespeare in his big fat Santa suit as like an actor. And I was like, get me out of here. That would have been so great to have made the movie, but yeah.
Well, you've been really lucky with scene partners. We've seen you a lot with Paul, who we adore you two together. But you and John, I mean, the chemistry was just amazing. Like that was such a great casting pair. Yeah,
that was the first time I met John as well. So you never know what's going to happen. Yeah. And yeah, it was really, really great. He's really funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You both are,
totally different style of humor than Paul, but super quick. He's so fast, and that's really fun to be in a scene with too. Cause yeah, anything I would throw at him, he was like hitting it out of the park. You know, I'm just like sending stuff, and he was like, you know, and that's from the very first scene. I was like, oh, I was really nervous, because I thought, you know, his job was really tricky to take that full of himself kind of archetype and still be likable, You know, like wow, that was I was like, there are so many traps all over this script if given to the wrong person.
Yes.
That would
Yes.
be really tricky. And then it'll be really tricky for me to do, we both had to give and receive. So he from day one, I was like, oh, I like you, like it's hard. He's like making me smile about how ridiculous he is. So that was a beautiful way to approach it. He kind of had a bit of a wink at himself, like he kind of knew what he was doing, but he was having a lot of fun while doing it, so.
Well, I think that's what made it so heartbreaking, was because you end up loving him. He comes off that he's just very likable. And then what he does at the end, it's just gut wrenching for the audience, just like, I get a little upset just thinking about it. Like that ending was just a punch.
It got a little, the way they cut the end and what's in the final version, I think was there was a little more summary as to what, that it had been a year.
Can you give us that summary now? Because that's what we felt too. It had been edited at the time.
There was, and it ended, they had to make some tough calls. But both of our speeches were cut up, and I felt like maybe it didn't make all that much sense either, because I knew what was and what John and I were sort of fighting for. But that was, that it started with me saying, he goes, hey, I'm not really thinking so, am I right? Anyways, it's really good to see you. And I meant what I said. And then I say this thing that I got cut. I said, I haven't heard from you in a year.
Oh.
And I think maybe because I was like, poof, there was like another thing. Maybe they were like, we don't need it twice.
No, give it to me, because that would have been so much more like realistic. Because we're like, how is she forgiving him?
And then you come in here,
yeah,
and you want to say that, but the truth is, I'm okay now, and I'm good. But you can tell she's not good, and she's trying really hard to be good. And he's like, I said, so bye, Brad. And I like try, as best I can to like try to leave. And then he's like, all right, you're fine. And I think that's where they felt like it just needed to speed up. But then he said, I tried to whatever, and it wasn't about that. And I was like, don't. We kind of have like this fight.
Oh.
And then there's this fight that ensues. I'm like, just, I don't want to hear it anymore. You had a year, like to in all this time, you made me live with this, and you made me get up, so go, you like whatever. And then I like leave, and then he leaves, and then that's kind of filmed. And then he comes from out the thing, like barreling through that, whips me around, and is like, I think they were just kind of like, whoa. we were too explosive, and I don't know, maybe it didn't sit quite right, but
too much drama.
Was the thing where you kind of went, oh, that.
It needed it. I mean, that's one of the things that we like to talk about, as far as technical goes, those decisions, an editing decision that happened. And sometimes you edit something just for time or what have you, and a piece is missing, and that's.
And you gave us that piece.
So thank you for filling that in for us.
And I sometimes see that and I go, that's where the huddle, where you kind of go, we're running 30 minutes over. Right. How do we best accomplish this so it lives? And it was just, there were 150 extras, and we were in this thing, and, it's like, they're just go, it's like 1 a.m, go, Kim and John. And John and I are trying our best to, get this thing accomplished so that we, the ending made it in, and you're fighting against time, and I may not make the best calls to, again, walk through it, which I felt like we needed at the beginning, and then let it fly. So I think we got rid of the walk because of time.
Yeah.
So like in my metaphor, maybe I should have just let it go all in one, like just have that whole thing explode. But I was like, there's a tentativeness to that. Like what, when you haven't seen somebody for a year, you're kind of like, oh yeah, you're leaving. Yeah. Well, I've seen that before, First of all, I haven't seen you for a year. Second of all, you just left. Yeah. Also.
Yeah, that was
like
awful.
when he gets in the van and I'm like, okay, bye everybody. That was another scene that I did a number of things. I was like sobbing through that one too. I gave a couple of different versions, but I was like, my heart is broken. This guy's just like leaving. Anyway.
It feels like you're still in this character. Really, you're
still thinking about it.
Every single one of them lives in me. They're like yesterday.
No, but I feel things deeply too, and so we talk about it a lot. But like, I really get into these movies, and yeah, that whole situation was very upsetting. Mm-hmm. But wonderful. We love the movie. You kind of mentioned there's like some more projects coming up. You mentioned a Valentine's movie. Is there anything that you can speak about of anything of what you're doing?
I think I have to let them make the announcement, is my understanding. But yeah, it'll be in Loveuary, which is February. I've done it like, I've done a summer kind of wedding one. I've done, I haven't done a Valentine's one. And this one, I'm just knee deep in trying to figure out right now. So I can't say too much. I don't, there's gonna be a lot of probably, we're just working really hard at getting this thing to a place where we can shoot it really soon. I'm gonna start at the end of November. Oh, wow. Yeah. And then Paul and I are working on a script. So yeah, just that's
plugging away.
Yeah. So no rest for the wicked.
Well, fun fact, I had to bring this up because I just thought it was a cool thing. So you mentioned that 9 Lives was your first, but your first actual Hallmark movie was A Bride for Christmas.
Oh, that's right.
And Andrew Walker was the lead in that. And now you're writing, or you wrote a movie that he's starring in. So I just thought that was like a really cool full circle thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was my, I wasn't even in Vancouver, still in Seattle. And I was doing a show here on Sci-Fi with Niall Matter, actually, which is a fun fact. I played his wife, or then dead wife, but I was like constantly in flashbacks. He was trying to like save me from another realm or something.
How do I know? I don't know about this.
Yeah, I first was like started kind of more in sci-fi, actually.
I saw there was something called Spooksville. Is that what?
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't seen it, but I read about it.
It was like an R.L. Stein, those Goosebumps.
Oh, I know the Goosebumps.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's where I met Andrew, and we were friends ever since. So nice. Every time we would see each other, and then shortly after that, I ended up doing a Hallmark pick me up for 9 Lives, and then there was a significant break in there, and then I was like, let's get married and do these movies.
Yeah, she was like supporting, and they're like, make this woman a lead, and we are all the better for it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, last thing, we do this thing with all of our guests. It's called a proud plug. And it's whatever you want to talk about that you're proud of right now. It could be professional or personal, just anything you're proud of right now in your life.
Um, you know, I think with three men coming up on Saturday, it was such a big feat, and it was really scary because it was a follow-up to Starlight. And I really struggled thinking maybe that was just a one-time thing. Like I couldn't do it again. Maybe I'm not a writer.
Wow.
That fear, you know, and I had a lot of insecurity, and I was really sort of, yeah, just when I would hit a bump, I would go, see, I can't do this. I can't do it. And we made a really beautiful thing and brought like three really wonderful men into my life that are now really great friends. You know, we got to talk about a lot of heart things. And yeah, I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud of pushing through the initial fear to go, why do they think we can do this? Because we knew how putting three male leads in a Christmas movie would go. And then you go, can we make something that will equal that? You know, can we do it? So it's really scary. And I'm, regardless of what people think of this script or how it goes, I'm really proud for trying and putting myself out there. So
That's so wonderful. Thank you for sharing
You
that.
should be. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Well, we're all very excited about it. Congratulations. I know it's going to be a hit and we can't wait to see it.
Yeah, we're
well,
thrilled.
thanks for the chat and for everything you said. It's really sweet.
Well, thank you so much. We'll be sure to let you know what we think of the movie. I'm sure we're gonna love it though. Just looking at the previews and everything and knowing you and Paul, I'm sure we're actually gonna fall in love with it.
Okay. Well, send me a message, let me know, and enjoy.
Thank you. Take care.
Yes.